Ladies and gentlemen, thieves and crooks, hoodlums of all ages, I am the comic outlaw, and today we will be talking about one of my favorite Spider-Man villains all the way back from the 60s, the Sandman, William Baker, aka Flint Marko, for those that know him purely from the Sam Raimi movies. Yes, sir, we will be going over this villain slash sort of hero slash mercenary. He's worn a lot of different hats over the past tenure. He's been everything from a Spider-Man villain to a pseudo good guy to an anti-hero. But let's go over some of his powers. Of course, he lives by his name, the Sandman. He's a Earth Elemental. He does have control over the sand. He can bring himself back from a grain of sand. He's very interesting. At first, water was a big weakness for him in the 60s, but he has managed to absorb or evolve past it. But water is one of the big weaknesses for the Sandman. And of course, he got his power from a nuclear test site on a beach. He was exposed to the radiated sand, which irradiated his body, turning his body into like glass-like pieces of sand. And as I've said before, this character has been on the side of angels at times. He's been a mercenary, and that was actually thanks to him turning to the good side by, I do believe, Ben Grimm. We did a video on him recently, actually. You should check that out. The thing about Sandman that I've always found cool is that, like I said, he does have a way of crisscrossing. I love his abilities, his powers. I love that his sand, he can manipulate the sand to turn into like maces, hammers, blades. He does a lot of cool stuff. He can like move through the sand. He can actually absorb the dirt and make himself bigger. He's basically an earth elemental, a scientific earth elemental, which I've always found interesting about the character. He's actually been one of my favorite ones since the 60s. It's the classic Stan Lee, Steve Ditko run. A lot of good characters actually came from that. I actually highly recommend that if you like Spider-Man, you should actually go back and revisit these characters as they were in the 60s. Granted, it is a little campy. Granted, some of the phrases, the words, the way Peter looks, it's out of date, but it's so worth going back and looking back at the old stuff. And the Sandman is no exception. He's one of those hidden gems. Of course, he was in Spider-Man 3. I thought the actor that played him did a decent job considering what they had to work with. The script was a little hackneyed and there was just too many villains in it. And as I've said before, the Sandman's been a good guy and a bad guy. Here's a picture of him with a classic Sinister Six. He always did a little work for Doc Ock, if you know what I'm saying. And of course, he was also with Silver Sable in the Wild Pack. That was in the 90s after a brief stint as an Avenger. Which is interesting. He was also a side member of the Avengers, too. Ben Grimm really went out on a limb for him. And here he is, a beautiful Silver Sable who's had alliances with Doctor Doom, has worked with Spider-Man. She's one of those neutral people that manages to do odd jobs for a lot of different characters, both good and bad. And the Sandman fit right into that. Actually, him being part of Silver Sable and the Wild Pack really made his character for me. I thought it was so cool because he's both a good guy and a bad guy. There's times where he's been brainwashed. There's times where he's been shattered, scattered, blown to the winds. But somehow, some way, the Sandman always comes back and he always does what he does. Whether it's for good or whether it's for bad. Believe me, the Sandman always seems to have his own reasons, his own outlook on things, and basically his own motivations, which makes him a very interesting villain slash hero slash anti-hero. I keep saying that a lot, but he's one of those villains that just seem to cross over from one hero to being a bad guy to being an anti-hero to just basically doing what he's want. The Sandman seems to be one of the wild cards in Spider-Man. Sort of like the Riddler and Batman, he's done this and that. The Sandman is the same way. He's had so many interesting trips. He's a very interesting character. He's made a lot of appearances in the Spider-Man media, all the way dating back since the first cartoons, all the way to the animated series. I mean, even in the movies, he's just one of those characters that just has that longevity because of his cool powers, and he's just one of those interesting type guys. But anyways, that's my view. That's the Outlaw's view, saying what's up to the Sandman. And as always, this is Jack Slater, the main man, the man with the plan. And as you know, if you like what you're hearing, then please hit the subscribe button. I do take requests, so hit me up. And as always, this is the main man, and I will catch you on the flip side. Yeah.